Welcome to the Halo Effect, hospitality stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.
With over 40 years working in the hospitality industry, we've lived some incredible experiences, and as a husband and wife team, we continue to forge our path through business and life that continues to present challenges and opportunities. Through this podcast, we would like to share these experiences and provide some behind-the-scenes insights into the world of hospitality and entrepreneurship.
We hope that this will help anyone who is on a similar journey by sharing how we forged our own path through this incredibly rewarding, yet often challenging industry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Halo Effect podcast. I'm Ashleigh, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Michael.
Hello.
In today's episode, it's all about hospitality trends, challenges and opportunities, and we've got a powerhouse panel with us today. So joining us are two exceptional professionals who are shaping the future of hospitality in their own right. Welcome, Joanna Fisher and Roz Hardiman.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely.
Very welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you both here. So before we dive into the discussion, let's give our listeners just a bit more background on our guests. So starting with Joanna Fisher. Joanna is an accomplished commercial director with over 25 years of expertise in hospitality, sales and marketing. She's worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, including Q Green Hotels, IHG, Starwood and the Ascot Group. She consistently delivers exceptional results, driving value not only for guests, but for hotel owners and stakeholders. Joanna is skilled in identifying new markets and anticipating shifts in demand, which has enabled sustained growth for multi-brand environments and independent hotels alike. And as a leader, Joanna is known for guiding her teams through change, building high performance and adaptability at every level. And we're thrilled to have her insights on the trends shaping the hospitality industry today.
Well, lovely to have you, Joanna. And we're also
Thank you. That's great to be here.
We're also excited to welcome Roz Hardiman. Roz is a people and culture specialist with extensive experience as a HR director across hospitality. She has a really deep understanding of multi-site businesses, luxury, small, medium enterprises, focusing on improving employee attraction, engagement and retention, which is all so important at the moment. Roz is all about impact. She's shaped hiring practices, organizational development and employee engagement strategies. Roz's strategic approach and her commitment to driving HR from the front have really helped her cultivate resilient, high-performing teams. That really is the key to enhancing the overall guest experience. We're so glad to have both her and Joanna here to share the perspectives and the challenges and opportunities in the industry.
Now, we've all worked together before for at least 5 years, and we worked together during days with Q Green and have rebranded, opened and launched hotels. We've gone through COVID together, and we recently have worked with Joanna and Roz as an extension to our Halo team and what we like to call the Halo Effect, where Roz and Joanna brings each of their specialist skill sets to really enhance the services that Halo can bring to the industry and to our partners. And we're delighted to have worked on some really exciting rebranding projects that covers the whole spectrum from commercial through to the employee experience, the guest experience, and all of the marketing and PR strategies in between. So it's wonderful to have you both here. And you've both, I suppose, gone through a slight new chapter in your careers. So Joanna, you've recently moved into becoming an independent consultant and really supporting the businesses in the industry from that overarching commercial perspective.
We love consultants.
So how's that journey been so far for you?
Well, it's been really exciting. I'm a great believer in that whole phrase around do something that makes you feel uncomfortable every day. I'm a great believer in it, but it makes me feel uncomfortable every day. And this is one of those things because we all suffer from imposter syndrome, right? And I'm no different. But yeah, that's the challenge of it. But when you push through and actually start to look at the opportunities that are out there, and the desire for me was around sharing that experience, because I'll talk about it when we get to some of the trends. When we've all been through COVID and the change that we've seen and the huge movement of people out of the industry, we've lost so much experience. So it feels like the right time to be going into consultancy and freelancing and looking at how I can help other businesses and bring some of that experience, an experience of being able to pivot and look at new ways of working and bring teams with the business, because ultimately why we all, I think, work so well together is because we know people are at the heart of delivering to business. So it's been really challenging but very exciting, and it's given me a chance to do some mentoring and new projects that I wouldn't have thought I would be able to do on my own, but actually I've really enjoyed it, and it's ignited some of the passion I have for writing and creative content and branding and the real emotional side to business, and really recognizing what a difference that can make to the bottom line for businesses.
Fantastic.
It's an incredible journey, all right. Life, business. And Roz, you've had a bit of a similar move yourself, haven't you?
Yes.
How's that experience been so far?
Well, as Joanna says, it's a great experience. It's good to challenge yourself. This is something that I've thought about doing for many years, but again, a bit like Joanna says, you know, that imposter syndrome kicks in and you think, is anybody going to listen to me? Have I got anything to share? But I think particularly over the last 5 years or so, when we've been dealing with, you know, COVID and cost of living crises and all of the challenges that businesses have had on them, you realise that, you know, you have got quite a bit of knowledge and experience to offer organisations. So it's scary, but it's nice to get out there and work with a variety of people and actually share some of that knowledge. I'm sort of, you know, probably at the latter end of my career, but this is about, you know, giving back as much as anything. Helping organisations that perhaps don't have the benefit of the sort of resources that I was used to having when I was in a corporate role, and actually helping to share some of that knowledge around.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, and wonderful to hear how, you know, you essentially are both, as you say, giving back all of that industry expertise and really supporting businesses in a flexible way, which I think particularly coming out of COVID, as you say, you know, I think businesses are just needing that, you know, support around the you know, fast-paced change and supporting their whole team members.
And very much doing what you want to do as well. It's like it's really focusing on the things that are your own passions as well, which I think is so crucial, especially when you get to a certain point in your career and you realise, you know what, I really just want to do what I want to do.
Yeah, and have that flexibility to support multiple businesses. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we've all had this kind of move into supporting the hospitality industry in a flexible way. And as I say, we're so delighted that you're part of our wider Halo team. And in fact, you were our kind of roving reporters out at WTM. And I know that you had a full 3 days of reconnecting with friends in the industry, meeting new friends, and also hearing a lot of the insights from the industry. And we would love to have a chat with you about some of the key takeaways and some of the insights from WTM, and also it's the season, isn't it? Independent Hotel Show and a number of other industry events have taken place. So, you know, over to you guys. What were some of your key takeaways from the events that you've been to recently? And maybe Joanna, if we start with you.
I might let Roz take.
Perfect.
We'll start with me. Well, I was going to say I didn't do IHS because I was travelling for research purposes, obviously.
Absolutely.
Because it's another passion. I love travelling, broadens the horizon. That's where I get some of my best ideas that I can bring back to the UK and repurpose for the markets. But from a world travel market point of view, it's been a while since I've been, and it is huge. That's the biggest thing that struck me. And lots of people said it's the biggest that it's ever been, and it was busy. Everybody was busy.
Great.
Busy contracting, busy doing business. And in years gone by, those types of shows can they continue, they survive, but they don't necessarily thrive. And I think this year, from speaking to lots of different people, whether that be buyers or suppliers, and some of the insight workshops that I went to, there is a real positivity and almost a surprise at how well the travel has done. So it's growing, and it's on the road to 2 billion global travellers globally, which is,
that's
is
quite
huge
a stat.
to think. That's record breaking. And it's record breaking this year as well. And business travel has come back. There are emerging markets that are stronger than others, like the Middle East, no surprise, Asia, and but everybody has done well. So with some of it was harder to identify challenges because it was, there's this whole joy phrase that's knocking about, whether it be from the presidential election and Oprah screaming it out, or Keir Starmer trying to convince us all about positivity as we go into the election. There's a whole joy word, and that was very much the case at World Travel Market. There was a feeling of joy across the show. And we talked about, myself and Roz talked about this, where you walk into a show and you've got Israel and Palestine sharing a stand. It's quite something to see that travel transcends everything, and the joy of travel. You leave everything else at the door and you do business for travel. So that's the feeling that I got there. Tech was massive. As in, everybody was talking about tech, but I think I understood and heard that IHS was bigger for very specific tech. And so I would say this traditional tech at World Travel Market, but not in the same way as IHS.
Yeah, and I think we, so Roz and I went to IHS, and you're absolutely right. I think there's definitely more of a lean towards tech from the independent hotel shows, and I suppose supporting those kind of smaller boutique brands who maybe don't have the infrastructure of those, big global players that we know in the industry. So, that was definitely a takeaway from IHS as well. And Roz, from your perspective, how was WTM for you?
Well, as Joanna says, it's massive. I used to go to WTM back in the day when I worked in tourism. I used to work for a regional tourist board, and I used to go at that time. And it was a big show then, but now it is totally unrecognisable. I thought it was a very well organised show, and I really enjoyed just being there as a traveller, having a good look around, seeing what was available. From a networking perspective, it's one of those shows where you have to be really organised and make sure that you've got your list of people that you want to see and booking appointments and everything else. But nevertheless, I bumped into some very interesting people and had chats with them. And as Joanna said, I think that, and also at the Independent Hotel Show, there was a lot of positivity. The difference, I think, at the Independent Hotel Show is much smaller operators, and they, are still quite nervous about what's going to happen going forward. So whilst there is a lot of positivity about the market, as in there's plenty of people out there wanting to travel, I think and particularly in the UK, some of the challenges that businesses face this year and beyond are still causing concerns. So whether that's tax changes, national insurance hikes, whatever it may be, those are causing headaches for businesses who, are facing additional costs. So it's that balance of positivity with a bit of nervousness about what's coming.
Yeah, and I think that you're right to call out, some of those recent changes and adding to a world where operators have had to operate with increased inflation and, suppliers having to pass on those costs to the hotel operators, which ultimately then they have to make a decision whether to pass those on to their guests and customers. But yeah, just to kind of come back to the national insurance, hike, and that has been a bit of a hot topic, and a lot of sort of industry spokespeople are kind of coming out to sort of talk about how that's affecting your business. Have you seen any sort of interesting stories in the media, or any conversations that were had when you've been looking at that?
Yes, certainly this last weekend, UK hospitality, a number of businesses that are members of that organisation. So that includes people like IHG Hotels, JD Wetherspoons, those sorts of organisations. They have, voiced their concerns. And I think the interesting thing is, retail has been very similar. They've been expressing concerns, particularly about the national insurance hikes. But to an extent, retail has more of an opportunity to pass on price increases, whereas I think the opportunity to do that within hospitality is more limited. And Joanna, I'm sure, has some thoughts on that in terms of, exactly how much can you pass on. So then what you come back to is, okay, so how do we become more efficient? Do we find other areas to save costs? Do we use tech more? Businesses, again, are having to look at all of that. How do they operate efficiently? Productivity was the big buzzword about 5 years ago. That's coming back again. We still have a skill shortage. There's that loss of leadership at the middle levels. All of those sorts of things are impacting on businesses, and they need to find creative solutions.
Yeah, and I think, the point around being more efficient, and I think, I've read a lot around, that behind the scenes use of tech that supports the efficiency and productivity of your team, that allows the team that you do have to have that opportunity to create more personalized experiences, or to just really kind of have the time and opportunity to make those kind of genuine connections with their guests. But and the point around, how much can you pass on to consumers? I think, we've all felt the pinch, whether it's doing our weekly shop, whether it's, booking a holiday. And I think, there's that coming, for me personally, it always comes back to how much do I value this experience. And I'm often happy to pay, whether it's for a theatre ticket or a concert, or to go out for a lovely meal, or have a weekend away. The price is one thing, but if I feel that I'm getting value and I'm genuinely going to get an experience that's worth the price. But again, that can be quite subjective, and ultimately I'm sure there is a tipping point. And Joanna, I know from a commercial strategy and pricing perspective, you will have some thoughts. What are your views on this?
Yeah, and I think, it's the pragmatism of when you're faced with something like this is, well, in the good old keep calm and carry on fashion in the UK, potentially the only place to go really for businesses to protect their profit is going to be price. But it's about what they price and what products they offer. Another one of the key trends at World Travel Market was around authenticity and trust. And, we've done a lot of work around content and marketing and social media. And this is where, I guess, I'll say complexities come into it, but actually it's around cutting through that noise of being able to be really rigorous with understanding what plan you've got to deploy within your business to maximize those opportunities. So if you are increasing prices, like you said, Ashleigh, that people feel that they're getting value for money for that, because it's a really difficult environment. How do you be authentic? How do you deliver a bespoke and real experience to multiple different types of travellers that there are now, in multiple different trends like jet setters and, here's a new one I heard, JOMOs, the joy of missing out. People
love that.
The joy of missing out. Slow travel, killcations, familycations, all of those cations that we've labelled nicely. It's a challenge, but when you strip it all away and look at what do you need to do to continue to protect your profit within the business, it's going to be people-led, and it's going to be ensuring you've got a rigorous plan to deploy within your business that is measured and and you're taking people with you. So rigorous project plans, task force, all of those things that we've all done during, well, pre-COVID, but during COVID and post-COVID, and during asylum seeker hotels, doing the hotel hokey-cokey, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out, and putting them back into market. The only way to cut through some of that and keep on track and keep following that North Star to profit is rigorous plans and having that experience around the table to help you get there and collaborating with the team. So, yeah, there's going to be challenges that come, and it's even in so much as the technology. It's one of the biggest challenges I saw recently, and one of the biggest frustrations I had as a commercial leader was, I guess, C-suite and above stakeholders putting in tech solutions without the rigor of understanding how it would impact those users and people on the ground. And interestingly enough, the Google travel person that was on stage at World Travel Market was talking about her lessons learned when putting new projects in place around, you can convince the C-suite, but once you've done that, you need to get practitioners on board in the early stages. So that's the troops on the ground from middle management down. Everybody's on board and knows what that needs to be done within that new technology, and has the opportunity to voice their opinion on why it wouldn't work, because they're the ones at the ground dealing with those customers, but coming up with solutions to overcome that. And I think that's something we're kind of coming out the back end of. Businesses have invested in technology and it hasn't worked, and it's been costly. And this is where I think, and it was a very long-winded way to get back to the national insurance and the cost of business, but this is where I think there's an opportunity to improve efficiencies. It comes back down to the ground roots of how you do that in the business.
And hospitality is always very resilient in those situations. We sort of find solutions in those situations. I think we found that the luxury sector was definitely more able to pass on costs to customers recently, although there will be a limit to that because they've already passed on a lot of costs by prices going up.
But I think, that perceived value, and they can sort of add more value to the experience, or there's a little bit more flexibility. But no, there's a couple of really great points I just want to come back on around ultimately being really people-led, and you know, Joanna, I love that you talk about having your commercial pricing strategy and approach, but it all comes back to the people who are going to be delivering that, and people bringing them on the journey, which is very much the work that then Roz brings her skill set in and around that whole employee engagement, and ultimately supporting their empowerment, and which ultimately helps retention, recruitment. So actually, I think the power of having that commercial mindset, but very much in tune and connected to the overall people strategy of the business, and then, you know, your marketing communications machine can then come and help to amplify those messages, and your guest culture and your guest experience then comes off the back of all of that. So I think that joined up thinking for me is so critical, and I think that's where we've all worked together and been able to deliver projects that, you know, have that holistic view. So I think it's even more important now, as you've mentioned, with all of that.
When you look at, you know, where costs are incurred within businesses, often it's because you're not paying enough attention to engaging your people, retaining them, developing them, etc., etc. And what we have to create are these workforces of highly engaged people who are loyal and committed, who can then deliver the plans and the strategies that we require from a commercial perspective, you know, and we sometimes lose sight of that and just focus on one side of it. We have to get back to that, you know, and I hate people sort of say, oh, well, you know, people are our most important resource, but we don't treat them like that sometimes. And we need to focus on that a lot more.
Yeah, and it's that kind of authenticity and trust again, isn't it? And from an internal perspective as much as an external. And then, just a point. No, go ahead, please.
Time and time again, it reminded me, because I reconnected with somebody that I recruited years ago into an entry-level sales position, who's now doing very well in sales, and they're just about to bring an office over to the UK. She's moved back to Spain. And we were just chatting about her journey from when I recruited her thinking she had something, and the biggest barrier for her succeeding when I eventually broke through that was confidence. And it was confidence with pricing, and it was confidence with saying no to customers, but also saying no to internal leaders and having the confidence in her own ability. And once we broke through that and weren't apologetic about charging a price for a product that was a fair supply and demand price, and once she was confident in my decision is the right decision, and once she knew that she had an environment that would allow her to make mistakes, so if she lost a piece of business that was worth 80 grand, nobody was going to sack her. It was all part of the learning curve. The group business went up by about 30% within 6 months, because we just created a framework for her to be able to be empowered to do what she had the experience and knowledge to do. And it's very simple things. And I've done that time and time again in the sales team in Kew Green. I would say we're one of the best negotiating sales teams, because that's where I focused on initially at the base level, because they were great relationship builders, salespeople, that's kind of a given. But where they weren't confident was delivering awkward news about pricing. And again, that was part of the success. And that helped at that time mitigate those rising costs and accelerate the performance of rate growth further than any of my competitors, because the team had confidence, and we used examples of, retail examples and other business examples to say, that's how you get that confidence.
Yeah, and it's really important, as you say, to identify those specific development gaps that you can then nurture, and I'm sure it was similar on property as well. And when you've worked very much at the front of house, and you're have the opportunity to maybe upgrade a guest or book something, and I think again it's that sort of perception around that price and value. But so
I think you often get a very weird situation sometimes when people are working sort of behind a desk or in a restaurant or something like that, and money just becomes it's a kind of a commodity, isn't it? It's not, there's no, you end up talking about these incredibly massive amounts of money that would be, your month's rent or your mortgage payment or something like that. And you're just throwing out numbers like that. And it feels like a different part of you is almost dealing with it sometimes. And then I sort of felt the same way when we became consultants and we started our business as well. Then sort of it was a whole new level of understanding value and our value and what we could offer people as well, because it was a lot more personal then. And it wasn't just hiding behind the whole business and saying, yes, we as a team offer this value. Now it's just me and Ash, and we need to do this.
And it's so difficult, isn't it? That whole talking about money piece, and it doesn't actually necessarily make any difference with team members. And I think that in some ways that's the great thing about some technology. That's certainly some of the technology that I've embraced in the past is around allowing the team's front desk particularly to focus on delivering surprise and delight and amazing authentic experiences to customer, no matter what level of hotel, luxury, entry level, Premier Inn, travel lodge, apart hotel. Have them focus on the joy of nurturing customers and delivering great experiences for customers, and have technology do the money bit. But in that journey, I think to a certain extent, you've de-skilled people on being able to do that. So this is the world we're in now, right? We have to be able to let's use the technology at the right time to help the teams do that. But the teams then need to stand up to being able to deliver amazing surprise and delight through a rigorous project plan on making sure when we do new ways of working with teams and hotels. But on the reverse of that, we need to invest more in training on some of those skills that, are time immemorial developed skills on negotiation and business practice and overcoming objections and asking great questions and all of those simple things that AI could potentially do for a generation, but when you've got a customer stood in front of you or you're out on a face-to-face meeting, AI is not going to be there.
Exactly. And do you think there's pressure around, that cost-saving element for operators? And I know often, and again, this is maybe a bit stereotypical, but often it's sort of training and the marketing budgets are the first to get hit when there's a cost-saving sweep. But yeah, I mean, how do you kind of manage that, or I suppose help to support the operators and those key decision makers to not cut that training? Because ultimately, that's what is going to be that long-term success factor. But yeah, have you had sort of experiences around that, or that you had to sort of overcome those challenges?
Mm-hmm.
Many times.
Yeah.
I think it's like any investment in a business. It's recognise what the return on investment is and being able to quantify that for somebody. And if we, using Joanna's example as what is value for money, the trouble with demonstrating value for money is that we all tend to make it about what we think is good value for money, which isn't necessarily what our customer thinks is good value for money.
Really good point.
It's about educating people and showing that you can, the whole thing about price is it's just very, very subjective. So we have to give people the confidence and show that can give a return. Once people have that confidence, as Joanna says, then they start to show the difference and to drive revenues, and that can happen throughout a business, and it's really putting that into numbers that C-suite will understand, or owners, or whoever it is you have to convince that you have to show there will be a return. The downside with most learning opportunities or training and development is there's a time lag. So you have to say, you might not get it back immediately, but you might start to see it come in next month or the month after or next year or 2 years down the line. But you've got to be able to quantify that, particularly as an HR professional. So you have to set yourself targets. You have to evaluate what you're doing and show that there is a return on that investment. But it's no less important than investing in equipment or materials or technology or anything else. The difference is you can cut your costs massively if you invest in those people, because they stay with you and they get better and better the longer they stay.
Very good point. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's actually an art to presenting the cost saving as well as the return on investment of training, because as Ros, that potentially has been lost, but because everything moves so fast now and there's a technology solution that you can plug in. Well, in reality, and you guys have heard me say this many times around it's 10% creation, 90% implementation, because you can have all the great shiny new ideas, and training is one of those things. You can do some sheep dipping, you can do 10%. We've got a problem, we need to train someone, train them, and then let them get on with it. Well, that likelihood of that succeeding potentially is less unless you have that 90% of this. The problem is still there, and problems in hospitality and hotels, there's very rarely a quick fix. It potentially takes a change. It might feel like a quick fix and you can get some quick wins, but I would argue that there is definitely a cost saving to invest in that training or taking on a new project to deliver, as long as you've got those good old school business techniques of putting KPIs in, measuring, going back and applying rigor. And the thing is, today, I think because teams are lighter, because technology has been assumed to not mean you don't need as many people. And I would argue sometimes you need more if you've got really great technology, because you still need people managing that technology, checking it's okay. So you do still need people to do that. And if you've got less people, then sometimes you need help to get that one project and that one problem solved for a longer length of time, till you come out the end and say, okay, that's done. I mean, I remember we used to have need hotels in Kew Green days. Well, when you've got 70 plus hotels, that you could have a list of 25 needs.
Absolutely.
It's about putting rules around that, because otherwise you're just setting yourself up to fail. You've got, how much resource do I have? How big is the problem? And what can I apply to that? And so some of those, and then when you have needs, some of those solutions were, okay, if we've got this hotel or business problem, we're going to stick at it for at least 3 months, likely 6 months, but until that turns green. And when that's turned green, we're going to keep going at it for another 3 months to make sure it's embedded and in the bones of the business and the people to move it forward. And nowadays, stuff can be quite fast, and we're at a bit of a precipice. So we've got all of this demand coming, all of this tech coming, and cost pressures from NI, and that's really exciting. And I guess it's where consultancy and freelancing is growing as an opportunity. But that's all going to need to be dealt with fast and through experience and rigor. And interestingly enough, one of the seminars that I went on it was a marketing seminar for content, but it had a data scientist on it, which I loved, because it felt like it had completed the circle, talking about content, tech, and all things social media. Yet they had a data scientist on there to say, but businesses need to look at what you're doing working, or is it not working, and does it need to be changed and adapted?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's we work a lot with data, and you particularly, Mike, around identifying those opportunities within the data, both from a guest behaviour perspective and how to speak and resonate with those guests in a really personalised way. But as you say, understanding, is what you're doing working, and if not, let's change it, and be really specific around understanding the KPIs and implementation plan. I think we could probably cover a lot of these topics, and I just want to kind of start to wrap up and just come back to something that we mentioned at the beginning, which is the joy of travel. And so Roz mentioned it was wonderful to be back at WTM also as a traveller. And Joanna, I know you very much love travel as well. Was there any particular destinations that stood out to you that are on your kind of bucket travel list now from attending WTM?
Well, mine was already on my bucket travel list.
Oh, was it? Where?
Oh. I have a sister in New Zealand, so that's on my list for next year,
amazing.
hopefully. But no, I could just travel permanently. And I'm trying to work a way that I could do that with a portfolio career, whether I could just be constantly traveling
digital nomad.
and working from wherever in the world. It seems possible these days. But so many exciting things, not to mention things like medical tourism, which seems to be growing as well. And you just think, gosh, you could just keep traveling and have a procedure along the way.
Come back another woman.
There you go. Sign me up.
Get me turkey teeth.
And for me, it was something, I was looking for something a bit different, and there was one stand that really drew me in, and it was the Korea stand. And they had some amazing videos. So very in the genre of Parasite, that award.
Yes, that award-winning,
an Oscar-winning Korean film. And their tourism video was just like that. It was a little bit weird, a little bit quirky, but a lot real and a lot authentic. So I think I'm really kind of drawn. I'm that traveller that wants the authenticity, the experience, and the culture. And I'm quite happy. I want a bit of luxury as well. So I'll also be one of the value hunters. But
it won't
Korea
be
definitely
Squid Game Part 2.
Imagery. Yes, they were squid. They were off doing fishing for squid, and it was just amazing.
Different kind of squid.
I was just like, this is so quirky and cool. And some of the places that they were showing and the local things that they were doing, you were like, that is bonkers. I want to go and have a look, see how that works, and have a go. And I think some of the other trends were around the play element for adults. So I think that's something that's potentially going to be coming down the line of adults want to play as well. And, I have a love of, I go from one extreme to the other, Korea to the magic of Disney and everything in between. So, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, that was my top
it is so inspiring. I know. I think, we've got a few places on our bucket list.
Right, New Zealand as well. I'd love to go on a Lions tour to New Zealand. I think that would be amazing.
I know we've looked at interrailing as an option, and I think, just again to have that cultural element and sort of visit a number of different places and, have those experiences of being on the like Glacier Express. I've also got huge notions around sort of work from anywhere and maybe do a sort of summer holiday stint in Southeast Asia. Costa Rica's another one that's up there for me. So how about you, Mike? Any others? All of the above?
Well, all of the above. Yeah, New Zealand I think would be amazing. But the idea of taking a summer off during sort of school holidays, I think is pretty spectacular, and I think that would be the ultimate achievement as well for us to be able to do that. And whether that means bringing a portable podcast studio around the world with us, or just working from a laptop in the mornings or in the evenings, depending on how it all works, or
time differences,
time off, or whatever it ends up being. I think that's a huge benefit of being able to work for yourself. And I mean, you don't have total freedom, of course not, because we have responsibilities, but
clients,
kind of maybe a little bit more flexibility ultimately.
And we're in the right industry for it, aren't we? Come on, we should be able to do this.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think sorry, just and your earlier point, Joanna, around sorry. After you, Joanna, please. Sorry.
You go.
There's a bit of a lag, I think.
I was going to say that work is an activity, not a destination.
Love that. And I think, we all are fueled by the inspiration of travel, and I think it makes us better consultants and kind of broadens our horizons. Totally. And I think it's kind of joy all round. But I think we'll probably have to wrap up now, and I'm sure we'll have you on many more times as guests, and we're so grateful for you for sharing your insights and your unique perspectives, having had amazing careers and having recently moved into more independent and portfolio careers. So from both of us, very, very, very grateful. And thank you both so much for your time and sharing your insights for our listeners.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you for listening to The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.
Hope that this has helped fellow hospitality people and entrepreneurs who may be on a similar journey.
If you would like to suggest any topics for future episodes, ask us a question, or would like to join us on a future episode of the podcast, then please get in touch. We've linked up our contact details in the show notes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe or follow The Halo Effect on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. We look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.